Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Sodanandana Brajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajanarandana Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Sodanandana Brajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajanarandana Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Sodanandana Brajanarandana Yashodarandana Prajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Sri Sri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Nitya Leela Vishnu Mishrapada, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananda Guri Vaishnavrinda Ki Sadgoswami Prabhu Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nithananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Brajabhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Incorporation Day of ISKCON Ki Dai Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to you, Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Satarini Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakalpatrubhyasta kripasindhu vevacha patidanam bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So this is the most fortunate day for all of us. Prabhupada founded his International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, in New York. This was the first corporation. So, to begin our story, Prabhupada originally was with Uptown, staying in some apartment near Dr. Misra's yoga studio. But somebody broke in and stole his typewriter and so many things, so he decided to move from there. Somehow there was one boy who was coming to the meetings at Prabhupada's place. That was Harvey Cohen. Now Harvey, he had gotten a big inheritance, and he was a bit of an artist, so he had this dream that he would go to New York and become a great big artist. So he rented what in those days was called AIR, not All India Radio, but all Artist in Residence. Because on the top of these apartment buildings, there was these big, completely open, so there was lots of light with windows all around, lots of light, artists could paint in these places. So he rented this place. And because he had a lot of money, suddenly he found he had so many friends. But they were all drug addicts, so they were taking advantage of his generosity. He eventually became completely disillusioned with New York City and the whole thing, so he just abandoned that place and moved back to California. So Meantime, he told Prabhupada that you can take over that, because they were all telling him, you better come downtown, because uptown everybody's very straight, just old ladies and people just smoking their pipes and listening to some Eastern philosophy. But young people downtown, they would really be receptive to your message. So they were begging him. Of course, the Bowery, that's the bowels of New York City. That's where you use, I don't know what it is now, but in those days, this was a horrible place. When Prabhupada's friends heard that he was moving to the Bowery, they said, Swamiji, don't go there, it's a dangerous place. Prabhupada said, I have no fear, Krishna is always with me. Krishna always protects me. Unfortunately, he also told one of his friends, David Allen, that David, you can also stay there, but you have to let the Swami will also be staying there. So Prabhupada started his classes, and many young people started to come. Among them was one fellow named Carl Jurgens, who was a bit of an activist, but he was very interested in spiritual life, spiritual movements. And just so happened, because Prabhupada mentioned, when he was living at the Bowery, he mentioned that he wanted to start a society, a legal society. Now for those devotees who were staying at that time, they didn't have any meaning for them. We were the type of people, anything organized we thought was a useless thing. Especially organized religion, we thought it was all just corruption, anything organized. People couldn't really relate to what Prabhupada was talking about, but Prabhupada knew that in the future he would have to have a respectable organization. Because although most of us were against all type of organized things, this was a selfish desire. Just like if we want to go to the park and have a good time, then we just go to the park and sit in the sun and, talk to somebody. But if we want to take everybody to the park, if we have a broad heart, loving heart, we want to take everybody to the park, so we have to arrange transportation, we have to arrange food, we have to arrange, music or dramas, and we have to. So organization is there. Now there may be so many faults in this material world. Even Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, every endeavor is covered by fault. And Prabhupada said, if you want to find fault, you'll find fault, because fault is definitely there. But if you want to find Krishna, Krishna is also there. You'll find him. So this was Prabhupada's love for all of us, that he wanted to take all of us back, not go back to Godhead by himself, but take all of us and make a big society to make propaganda. Anyway, Carl, because he was activist, he had contact with many different movements, and he had helped many movements get organized and things. And he had a friend named, I believe it was Stephen Goldsmith, who was a lawyer. So he contacted him. Meanwhile, although at first the living arrangement with Prabhupada and David was very nice, but David continued to take so many drugs. Although Prabhupada was warning him that your spiritual life won't be found in a pill. Now I was very, very fortunate. I was the president of Portland, Oregon, in the northeast corner of the United States. And not far, just across the river, was Washington State, and there was a city named Kelso. And Mukunda Goswami, at that time he was living as a householder in that place. So every once in a while he would come down to Portland, and he would tell me so many stories of the very, very early days. Because he was a musician, and he moved to New York City because that was the place. If you want to make it big, then you have to make it big in New York. It's the Big Apple. But as they became their group, they were having a lot of fun jamming together and playing music, and then all of a sudden it started to get some salt in the sweet rice. there's contracts you have to negotiate, and then when they were jamming and having a good time, they could play whatever they wanted. Now they have to play what the audience wants, or what the guy who made the contract with them, he wants them to play certain things. And suddenly, he was just at this time feeling the pinch of so-called material success in his heart. And somebody told him that not far from where he lived, just a couple of blocks, there was some Swami from India who was teaching Sanskrit. Because somehow in the Bowery, Prabhupada, some people had showed some interest. He started to teach a little Sanskrit, but gradually, Sanskrit is very, very difficult, and, American hippies are not ready for that type of discipline of memorizing all these, Sundays and this and that and so many things. Anyway, that fell apart. But anyway, he heard something like this. So he decided to go down, and he walked down. He found the address. Now, as I said, Bowery is the bowels of New York City. There was drunks sleeping in front of the door. He had to push them out of the way. Then now these drunks, nowadays we call them homeless. They had no home. They just drank, and wherever they were, they fell down on the floor and went to sleep. And hopefully you don't know, that if you drink, a lot like that, then it has to come out sometime. So you're drunk, and these guys are down and out. They just go behind a staircase and let go with nature's call. So he finally got the bums out of the way. He got through the door, and this smell of stale urine hit him. Hours Srila Prabhupada was staying in such a place, tolerating all these things, just to save us. And he walked up the stairs, he knocked on the door, and nobody came to the door. Suddenly he just heard a voice, "Come in." He said, I opened that door and I walked in, and I stepped 5,000 years back in history. There was this genie. He looked like a genie who just popped out of a lamp, draped in saffron robes, no kurta, just this uttariya over his shoulder, sitting behind a trunk. And nowadays we all have nice, aristocratic and what is the famous, anyway, all these beautiful suitcases. But in the old days you just had trunks. So Prabhupada was using that trunk as a desk. And he had a broken typewriter, and there was manuscripts. He was typing out Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Manuscripts were all over the place. So it didn't make any sense. Here's this genie who just this golden person, who just stepped out of 5,000 years of history, sitting behind this shipping trunk, the broken typewriter, manuscripts everywhere. So what is this, And, but Prabhupada smiled at him like meeting an old friend. Just like you're walking down the street, and all of a sudden you look and you see somebody you haven't seen for a long time. You know what kind of look you look like, So Prabhupada looked at him like that, "Come." And he motioned for him to sit down. There wasn't any chairs, so he sat on the floor. And he began discussing with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told him Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays we have classes, you should come. So he started coming. Meanwhile, we know somehow or other, our David, he took some intoxication and became crazy. And he screamed and shouted at Prabhupada. Prabhupada had never seen things like this. This boy, this screaming boy, he didn't know what to do. So he just grabbed a few things and ran out of that place, down the stairs, past the bums. Now, the Bowery, if you don't have anything to do, Prabhupada used to go to Chinatown, was nearby. He used to go to Chinatown to buy some things. But now he wasn't on any purpose. If you don't have any purpose to be in the Bowery, it's a frightening place. Prabhupada didn't know whether to go left or right or what to do. Somehow or other, Leelamrit says that he had Carl's number, so he called Carl Jurgens. Now those days we had no mobile phone, so I don't know how he must have gone to maybe Prabhupada knew how to use a payphone. It just says he called, or maybe he left he called before he left, but the way it's there in Lilamrit is that he downstairs and he called Carl, and Carl said, I'll be right there, and Carl came and took him to his house. Now Carl was a black American, but he had a white girlfriend who was a feminist. So she didn't like Prabhupada at all. And suddenly Prabhupada's in their house. Carl understood he had no place to go. So the situation became unbearable. And people started to come to visit. They knew Carl, so they used to come to Carl's house to talk with Prabhupada. So she was, his girlfriend became even more upset that their privacy was being invaded by this fellow. And Prabhupada, he was just tolerating all this, sleeping in the living room on the couch. What things Prabhupada went through to save us, we have no idea. So, as the scene got very intense, so they decided, Mukunda was like a leader, just like Prabhupada amongst his friends. They all thought, you have to come see this. I've seen so many sadhus. No, you come see this. Because if Prabhupada okayed him, then he would be okay. So they went to Mukunda, he'll know what to do. So it was a Saturday morning, early, must have been, like 7 o'clock, but for us that was early. Those days, we take a peek, 9 o'clock, and we see light, And all of a sudden there was a knock at the door, and Mukunda got out of his bed, he got dressed a little bit, he went to the door, and then he opened the door, and there was Carl and Srila Prabhupada. And he was just beginning to understand that Prabhupada was his spiritual master. So he didn't, he didn't know what to do, so he just, invited Prabhupada in, and Prabhupada saw his confusion. He said, it's proper when the spiritual master comes, you offer some fruit. So he woke up his girlfriend, Janaki, said, go cut up some oranges, And Prabhupada sat down. Now, American life means television. So you sit down, you turn on the TV. Whatever you're doing, you turn on the TV's in the background. So it was Saturday morning, some stupid cartoon was on. And Prabhupada just looked at this and said, this is nonsense. And Mukunda jumped off the couch in one move, he jumped off the couch and said, yes, Swamiji, this is nonsense, Then the cat jumped on Prabhupada's lap and Prabhupada went whack, like that. So then, he described the problem, and Carl kept saying, so you have to do something. He kept saying you, and he finally said, you have to do something, And he had no idea what to do, and Prabhupada looked at him, one of those looks like that, you've seen, where Prabhupada's face looks like a swan gliding across the pond, And he says, if I close my eyes, Mukunda told me, if I close my eyes, I can still see Prabhupada's eyes looking at me. But what are you going to do? He didn't have any idea. He said, yeah, we'll do something, we'll find a nice place. So somehow Mukunda found this storefront. So they arranged a meeting, and we don't have so much time. We could make this a bit long story, but anyway, somehow they arranged this storefront, and they painted it and fixed it up. Finally, Prabhupada got out of that horrible situation, and Carl Jurgens, later he became Karlapati, but I have no idea what happened to him. So, as soon as they moved to this new place, and Prabhupada again was talking, because this Stephen Goldsmith, he was also interested in spiritual life, so he started coming to Prabhupada's classes. So that one day after class, Prabhupada said, so you have something to say? And Stephen Goldsmith got up and he said, Prabhupada is making a society, incorporating a society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. When Prabhupada first told this, people said, no, it should be International Society for God Consciousness. He said, Prabhupada, God is a vague thing. Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is God. We haven't come to learn anything. We came to teach them who is God. So International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And he had all these papers, so we need some incorporators and some members. Nobody there was, they were just coming for classes Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. As Gargamuni told us, everybody had a job. Nobody was committed. But anyway, they wanted to help the Swamiji. Mukunda said, without even reading anything, you never sign anything without reading. We just signed because Swamiji wanted them to sign. So on this day, they all signed. They had to have, for the first year, some board of directors or trustees. So Mukunda was one of the first trustees, and somebody else became another trustee, and then for the second year and the third year, they probably weren't even around in the third year, but anyway, they all signed, they all looked at these papers. And what the paper said, Prabhupada had his 7 purposes of ISKCON. Prabhupada was just meditating and meditating. Because he knew one day, went away. Because they, if you have an organization, a charitable corporation, then people can get tax deduction for their donations. At that time, nobody had any money. Everybody, came. Maybe they put $1 or $5 when they pass a basket around every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, like that. So they couldn't understand, but Prabhupada was seeing into the future. Now ISKCON's name is just like gold. This is Prabhupada's mercy. Anyway, this is Prabhupada's 7 purposes: to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the unbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. To propagate a consciousness of Krishna, God, as it is revealed in the great scriptures of India, Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. To bring the members of the society together with each other and near to Krishna, the prime entity, thus developing the idea within the members and humanity at large that each soul is a part and parcel of the quality of the Godhead, Krishna. To teach and encourage the Sankirtan movement, congregational chanting of the holy name of God, as revealed in the teachings of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. 5. To erect for the members and for the society at large a holy place of transcendental pastimes dedicated to the personality of Krishna. To bring the members closer together for the purpose of teaching a simpler and more natural way of life. And 7, most important, with a view towards achieving the aforementioned purposes, to publish and distribute periodicals, magazines, and books and other writings. So these are the 7 purposes that Srila Prabhupada incorporated his ISKCON on this day in 1966. And Prabhupada started the International Society. Prabhupada said we should call it ISKCON. He was very proud of this called, in English we call it acronym. You take the first letter of each thing and make some word. So Prabhupada said we should call it ISKCON. So all these young boys who had no real commitment or anything, somehow they signed all these papers, and Prabhupada founded the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And Prabhupada managed to take these people because he had faith that if they chant and they take prasadam, they'll become purified. So he took these simple people who were addicted to so many sinful activities, somehow trained them in Krishna consciousness, got them to chant Hare Krishna, and he organized them and sent them out all over the world. And now Krishna consciousness is practically everywhere in the world. This was Prabhupada's vision. We're hearing from Gargamuni how they didn't imagine anything beyond 26th Avenue. When Prabhupada flew off to San Francisco, that was a big shock for them. That was a big shock. But Prabhupada had this vision and this desire. Prabhupada's love knows so bounds. He had this desire to let the whole world know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are not these material bodies, but we're part and parcel of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our duty is to render service to Him. So this is the immense love that Srila Prabhupada had for us, that he founded this wonderful international society for Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. So now we'll ask, somehow I mumbled around something, but now we'll have Daivi Shakti come and give you some real nectar. Hare Krishna.
लगा दिया नहीं है Waited so many years, I have to take this instruction very seriously. In 1947, Prabhupada started the Back to Godhead magazine, and he started expressing in there how he was going to fulfill this mission. Prabhupada would write letters to the big politicians. He would even write to Gandhi, to Nehru, and then after the independence, he would write to the different for instance, Sardar Patel, who was the Deputy Prime Minister. Prabhupada was writing and putting in his Back to Godhead magazines his vision of how he was going to organize this worldwide mission of spreading Krishna consciousness, Lord Chaitanya's teachings all over the world. So he had first 4 principles that he expressed to Sardar Patel. And then when Prabhupada had more time, that was very early in 1949, when Prabhupada had more time, when he was sitting in Jhansi organizing his first temple at the Bharati Bhavan, and he had some followers. He took his first disciple then, Prabhakar, Acharya Prabhakar. So then Prabhupada made his first prospectus and got it registered in Lucknow as the League of Devotees. And in that prospectus, just like Dinabandhu Prabhu just read the 7 principles of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, well, in the League of Devotees, there was A, B, C, D, E, all the way up to M. Prabhupada had so many different goals that he wanted to attain, and he put them all in that prospectus. So then, because of the governor's wife, she liked that building, she wanted to take it over for a women's activist program. That was curtailed, and Prabhupada then came here to Mathura, then finally Vrindavan, accepted sannyas, and Prabhupada became more and more determined that I must complete the mission that my spiritual master has given me. And in order to do that, I can't go empty-handed. I have to bring Srimad Bhagavatam to the Western countries. So Prabhupada spent about 5 years here translating, printing his first 3 books. And then finally, free passage from Sumati Morarji, he landed in America. And penniless, nowhere to stay, he was under the auspices of his sponsor, who was actually Sally Agarwal, because Gopal wasn't an American citizen yet. So Sally sponsored him. And then after just 2 or 3 weeks, he came to New York. And Dr. Mishra, who was dyed-in-the-wool Vedantist impersonalist, he fell in love with Srila Prabhupada. Although they had philosophical differences, he said that Prabhupada actually saved his life, because Prabhupada would come every day and cook for him. So Prabhupada, he would walk 7 blocks to bathe and cook in Dr. Mishra's swanky apartment. And Prabhupada realized very early that this was not going to work out, because Dr. Mishra would not allow him to speak. He would only let him do kirtan, like he was, in a circus. Now it's time for the Swamiji. And Swamiji would sing and dance and get his followers to dance along with him, but he wasn't allowed to preach. So he decided, anyway, anyhow, I have to get separate, I have to become independent. He got room number 307, and no toilet, nothing in that room. It was an office. And he started his own classes. He got his huge tape recorder that weighed about 5 kilos, reel to reel, and did the introduction to Bhagavad-Gita there. And he got a following. And this following was coming in a very unusual way. We heard about Harvey Cohen. He was one of Dr. Mishra's students. And Harvey, he was not part of the crowd of Dr. Mishra's students. He was from Lower East Side, where the young people lived. And in the Lower East Side, there was one vegetarian restaurant called The Paradox. So he would go down there and tell everyone about the Swamiji and encourage everyone to come to his classes. And now there was a mixing of the 2 groups. There was the stodgy, impersonalist followers of Dr. Mishra, and then these young people with funny hats and funny clothes coming up from Lower East Side to Prabhupada's classes. And it was like 2 different oceans. The waters, it wasn't mixing. So finally the young people went out. After Prabhupada's room was broken into, and he realized this wasn't a safe place, because he figured out very quickly it was the janitor himself who had broken in. So the young people said, "We need you, you come be with us." And then Harvey, who was leaving, he said, "You stay in my place." And then this young boy, now 2 days ago, Satsvarup Maharaj, he wrote me a letter, because he listens to our Prabhupada Lilamrita classes, and he fills in any details that we didn't know about. So in the Lilamrita, the young boy's name is David Allen. And in all of Prabhupada's journals, his diaries, the boy's name is Paul Murray. And also in Mukunda's book, Paul. So Sasru Maharaj, she wrote that they had to consult a lawyer, an advocate, and the advocate said that you can't put the people's actual names, because if they become antagonistic, they will sue you. And if you put this person's name, it's like waving a red flag. So Sasru Maharaj had to change the names of many of the people in the Lilamrita, that being the first of them, one of them. We'll see other name changes as we go along. So David, he became Prabhupada's assistant. He was purchasing for him and different things. Meanwhile, Prabhupada, he had his mission to go on with. And Karl, now according to what Mukunda says in his book, Karl was a professor who had graduated from Princeton. Very educated young man. And he was very interested in Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and he would come regularly. And this was an added instigation against Prabhupada from his girlfriend. His girlfriend that felt that Prabhupada was stealing him away from her. So, but he was very regular in his attendance, and he would bring his friends as well. And we'll see in this, the incorporation, there was one young woman named Carol Bikar. Now, she was the girlfriend of Karl's younger brother. And she used to help Prabhupada. She was the first to learn how to cook from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada absconded her rolling pin from her because he was teaching her how to make chapatis like this. He said, bring a rolling pin. He took it. She never saw it again. So she was learning how to cook, and she was attending the classes. And in this incorporation, there's a very interesting thing. Now, we have first the League of Devotees. That was the prospectus. And when Prabhupada told Karl in May that I want to incorporate a society, a religious society, because Prabhupada had already had experience in India. We know how important it is to be registered in India. So Prabhupada knew that he had to do the same thing, but he wasn't an American citizen, so he had no powers to do anything. So Karl arranged for his lawyer, Stephen Goldsmith. And Stephen became so interested, he used to bring his wife and his kids, and the kids loved the soup that Prabhupada made. And it became a very wonderful relationship where Stephen wanted to help Prabhupada. So this 20-page prospectus that Prabhupada gave Stephen, he boiled it down to the 7 principles in the incorporation. And then later, because that was just the beginning of Prabhupada's legal confirmation of what he was going to do in America, 4 months later, in November, actually it was November 14th, Prabhupada then got his tax exemption from the Internal Revenue Service. And that was actually what made ISKCON official. We'll describe that later, the difference between the two. So, because Prabhupada was still living in the loft then, in the Bowery, Stephen Goldsmith, you had to put up a sign on the door for 15 days that this is our official residence of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And then all of a sudden, on May 28th, Paul Murray, he takes too much LSD and he comes to attack Prabhupada because Prabhupada being an elderly gentleman, he simply asked Paul, he said they had a shower, and Paul would leave the bar of soap on the floor of the shower. And Prabhupada asked him that, please, I'm an old man, don't leave the soap on the shower because I might slip. And as a result of that, at 10 o'clock at night, May 28th, Paul came to attack Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had to gather whatever he could find that time of night, and go to find Carl to ask him what to do. And that was when that uncomfortable situation occurred. So here was the official posting that this was going to be the place of ISKCON, but Prabhupada couldn't stay there anymore. So they had to get another place, and then they got Michael to help, Mr. Michael. And Michael, he was very intelligent. He knew how the village worked. He knew exactly, because he knew where the East Village other printing, where their editorial office was. And just outside of their office was a newsstand. And every Wednesday when the newspaper would come out, newsstand would be the first place to get the newspaper. So that Wednesday morning he went, he got the first print, and he looked up all of the advertisements for storefronts and apartments. That day he went and he contacted Mr. Paul Gardner, and next thing they knew, they got a place for Prabhupada. And that was going to be 26 2nd Avenue. And Prabhupada was so astute. Mr. Gardner, he gave a price of the rent of the two places, and Prabhupada said, "We have an organization, and I would like you to be one of the honorary trustees." And Mike was like, "What organization?" And he said, "And the membership fees are only $20 per month, so we can cut that off of the rent." And Mr. Gardner immediately agreed, because he saw how wonderful Prabhupada was. And Michael's he's learning from Prabhupada how to do these things. For instance, when they moved in on July 1st, Prabhupada told Michael that you go to Con Edison, that's the electric company, and you tell them we're a religious organization, tax exempt, they didn't have anything, and we should get an exemption from for the electricity. So Michael went, and the man just looked at him. He said, "Sorry, we don't give discounts," and sent him away. So then Prabhupada personally went and got the discount. So Prabhupada knew he needed this incorporation. And on July 6th, he needed 9 trustees. And there was nobody committed whatsoever to Krishna consciousness. And so Prabhupada went with Carl one morning and told him to, asked him to sign this. He just signed it, he'd just woken up, because all night long in Staten Island, Mike used to, he was a musician, and he used to play at a bar in Staten Island. He'd have to take a boat and then a subway, get to the Bowery. He would sleep in the morning. But it didn't matter. Prabhupada went there in the morning, got his signature. And then July 7th, Prabhupada took all of the future trustees who committed themselves to Stephen Goldsmith. And then on July 11th, Stephen Goldsmith comes to the evening program. And Prabhupada sees him. He's sitting by the door. He's very well dressed with the tie and pants, and everybody else is in their hippie garb. So Prabhupada sees him there by the door, and Prabhupada starts to speak about him in the class. And he's speaking about how important it is to understand Bhagavad-Gita as it is, without interpretation. And he said, "I will give you an example. Here's our lawyer, Mr. Stephen Goldsmith. Now he knows what a lawyer can do to laws." And Prabhupada gave an example of, in Calcutta, they had made a rent law, a rent tax. And one advocate came, and he turned that rent tax completely upside down, so that the government had to scrap that law and make a whole new law. So he said, "Mr. Goldsmith, you have something to say? Please stand up." So Mr. Goldsmith stood up. He gave a little introduction. He said, "I have here," where is it? Yes. "I have here certificate of incorporation for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We need 9 trustees. Please come forward." So each year you need 3 trustees. So the first trustees, I forgot about I forgot that we had this. Yeah, we have this. I'll get to that in a minute. So the first trustees were Michael and his girlfriend Jan and James Green. So these three trustees, they all got initiated afterwards. Michael became Mukunda, Jan became Janaki, the first female disciple of Prabhupada, and James Green became Jagannath Das. Then for the next year was Paul Gardner, that was the landlord, and then Donald Chapdelaine. He was just someone who was sleeping at night in the 26 Second Avenue, and when everyone left, he would smoke dope. So Prabhupada had to kick him out. He was the second trustee. And then Raymond Mares. Now, he never got initiated, Raymond, but he helped Prabhupada. And then for the third year was Carl Jurgens. He became, Raymond Maris was Rai Rama. Yes. He was an editor of comic books. So Prabhupada made him the editor of the Back to Godhead magazines. Yes, he also got initiated amongst the second set of three trustees. And then for the third year, it was Karl, who became Karlapati, Raphael Balsam, who did not become initiated, but helped Prabhupada, and Robert Lefkowitz, who became the first Rabindra Sarup. And you'll notice that Prabhupada's name isn't anywhere on here. So where does Prabhupada come into this incorporation? They needed 3 witnesses. So the 3 witnesses were A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Carol Bekar, who we learned how to cook from Prabhupada, and Raymond Mares. So at this time, because Prabhupada wasn't a resident of America, he was simply one of the witnesses of his own society. So then, after this, let me go forward. How did Prabhupada get this name, International Society for Krishna Consciousness? There's a sloka by Ramananda Roy in the Padyavali, verse 14. And the first line is Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. That's the translation of that line is to be absorbed in the mellow taste of executing devotional service. And what Ramananda Roy says is, O saintly persons, if one finds the consciousness that is saturated and fragrant with the nectar of Krishna Bhakti anywhere, one should purchase it immediately. There was only one price to acquire it, ardent greed for serving Krishna. You'll see that word, lolyam, tatra lolyam api mulyam ekalam. Without this transcendental greed, even vast spiritual merits accumulated over millions of lives will not suffice to obtain it. So it was from this sloka that Prabhupada was inspired to name his society International Society for Krishna Consciousness. These are some pictures of Prabhupada as he wandered in New York and when he was at the loft. This is the prospectus of the League of Devotees. This is Prabhupada when he moved to 26 Second Avenue. There was a little garden, and when they would have the love feasts, everyone would sit out in the garden and throw their paper plates everywhere, and all the tenants would come and complain. And Prabhupada taught Brahmananda. He taught him that when the janitor would come down and complain about the mess in the garden, Brahmananda would say to him, we are just like your sons. Whatever you tell us, we will do. Please tell us. You want us to clean up? And then Brahmananda would start cleaning up everything himself. This is Prabhupada walking to the Matchless Gifts. Next to the Matchless Gifts was a petrol pump, mobile, with the payphone. So they wrote on the side wall to the Matchless Gifts that they've moved from the Bowery to 26 Second Avenue, come for kirtan, just in case everyone was looking for where Matchless Gift was. This is when Prabhupada became started to become famous, the first article was in the East Village Other, and a wonderful article was written there. And then finally, when the New York Times printed the Swami's flock, Prabhupada said, now we have attained success, because New York Times was the most famous newspaper in all of America. This is what the incorporation papers looked like. You'll see everybody's name. And these were the trustees. Michael Grant later became Mukunda, Jan became Janaki, James was Jagannath, Paul Gardner was the landlord, Don Chapdelaine was the guest who Prabhupada had to ask to leave, Raymond Mares was Rai Ram, Carl Jurgens was Karlapati, Raphael Balsam did not get initiated, and Robert Lefkowitz was Rabindra Sarup. Now Rabindra Sarup, we heard yesterday from Gargamuni, when he went to San Francisco, he disappeared. And then Prabhupada made a second Rabindra Sarup, who was William Deadweiler, and he's one of the gurus in ISKCON now. Then later, Prabhupada elected officers to the society. So the first president was Brahmananda, and the secretary was Satsvarup, and the treasurer was Gargamuni. Then, October 7th, that was just a few months later, Prabhupada got his first donation, because Prabhupada was thinking globally. And the next place he wanted to establish ISKCON was at the Radha Damodar temple. And Satsvarup gave $100 towards that. And Prabhupada contacted Nirmal, the Goswami, to get that land, which he refused to give. Then came the tax exemption. With this tax exemption, the men did not have to get drafted anymore. Because if you were a member of ISKCON now, which was a bona fide religion, it meant that you had to become a priest in the army. And Gargamuni explains the last thing the army wanted was people telling all the soldiers to chant Hare Krishna. So they didn't draft any devotees after that, because this was in the middle of the Vietnam War. And then from November onwards, Prabhupada started making more rules. We knew about the four regulative principles, and then Prabhupada started saying no frivolous sports, and all these other things, no onions and garlic and things like that. So Prabhupada started putting notices up, 3 notices. One of the additional rules and regulations, one of the 26 qualities of the devotee, and one of the 10 offenses against the holy name. So the congregation was expanding. This is when Prabhupada, he gets invited to go to San Francisco. Now all the devotees in 26 2nd Avenue thought that that was it. That was ISKCON. Prabhupada was going to stay with them forever. And then all of a sudden in January, they invite him to go to San Francisco, and he stays there for 3 months. And now Prabhupada, he's starting his Sankirtan. Street Sankirtan, wherever the devotees went. Then Prabhupada started the first printing press in Boston. And then finally, Prabhupada gave Brahmananda money so that he could contract a lawyer, and Prabhupada could get permanent residence in America. All the lawyer did was steal the money. So what Prabhupada did was he went to Montreal, and because Canada and India were both Commonwealth countries, he became a permanent resident in Canada. And then because he was a Canadian permanent resident, and Canada and America had very good relations, he then applied from Canada to become a permanent resident in America, and he immediately got it. So then he came back to America, and he told Brahmananda, okay, give me the money back. So this is Prabhupada's application for permanent residence. Now, because of the Bill of Rights of America, because all the people who originally came to America immigrated there, they were all there for religious purposes. So the first rule, the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment of the Constitution is religious freedom. So all over America, ISKCON was expanding and flourishing, huge temples being built, and by the time Prabhupada entered his eternal pastimes, there were 108 temples all over the world. Of course, everything is established. The most important of the 7 principles was the printing, the publication of the books, so that all of the other principles could be established in the world. And then Prabhupada made it clear, because Mukunda, he explained that after they got the corporation in America, Mukunda then got it done in San Francisco, the same corporation, then he got it done in London, and then he got it done in England, in Bombay. So all over the world, the same corporation was going to be copied so that it could be incorporated in every country of the world. And then Prabhupada, he made it very clear that wherever International Society for Krishna Consciousness was written, his name as founder Acharya had to be there as well. This is the incorporation of Bombay. India is different. We only have, in America, every single city had to incorporate separately. But in Bombay, we have one main office with a bureau, and all of our temples, I don't know how many, 70 temples we have now, 80 temples in America, in India, they're all sub-branches of the main office of Bombay. Now here, Prabhupada coming home. Bombay was Prabhupada's office where he got all of his legal work done, and our main donors were in Bombay. Prabhupada was, Mayapur was Prabhupada's place of worship, because that was a place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he wanted the 10,000 strong community of devotees to be established, and the temple of Vedic Planetarium. And then finally Prabhupada came to his eternal home here in Vrindavan and entered into his eternal pastimes here. Then the 50th anniversary was celebrated in Calcutta in a grand way, and 108 countries from all over the world, they came, had massive Mahasankirtan. They held all their flags to show how Prabhupada's mission was actually accomplished. And it all started with this incorporation of ISKCON on this day. Hare Krishna. Jai. Okay. Pendrive.
David Allen's real name is Paul Murray. David Allen's real name is Paul Murray.
Paul Murray, yeah.
Ramo